Hello, everyone, and welcome to Remainders, where we talk about our favorite movies. Today, we're going to be starting part one of our double feature from Fritz Lang with the sci-fi classic Metropolis. My name is Patrick, and with me is the talented artist who always has fantastic new pieces of work behind him, Darren Varel. How you doing, bud?
Doing great, Pat. Happy New Year to you, listeners, and Happy New Year to you, Pat. This is great. Starting off with a wonderful series. I can't wait to dig in. I know it has been a great end of the year for me. Do you want to talk quickly about what your end of the year 2022 is like?
No, mine was great, man. I'm just enjoying a couple of these pictures you got in the back right now, especially the count right there. That's fantastic. I mean, it's one of my favorite parts of starting the show. I get to see firsthand all the new pieces of work, which have been plentiful this year. So,
Yeah, if you're listening on the podcast and can't see it visually,
that's true.
But we do add these videos to our YouTube page. And they're also on our website, remainderspod.com. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, sometimes what we see visually, you can always see it and go back and take a look on our website.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No, yeah. Talking about YouTube, our YouTube listener watchers right now, but yeah, they always get to see these. Everybody else on Spotify, come check out the videos or check out Darren's site, man. He's got a lot of good pieces on there. Yeah, how have things been? My New Year was good. It was pretty chill. I was gonna shave this beard, at least trim it down, but then we hit -40 like right before Christmas here in Chicago. So all shaving plans kind of went out. So I'm definitely keeping the beard going for at least another couple of weeks to keep my warmth going. It's getting basically to Kratos from God of War length shape now. So definitely digging the vibe. And yeah.
Well, it's funny because this is now starting season 4 of Remainders, which is crazy, right? I mean, 4 seasons, that means 4 years of this podcast, or is it 3? I think maybe it's 3.
We are in the time suck of COVID, so 3 or 4 totally. Are both valid. So
that's when this started. So I think that would make sense that it's been 3 years. But anyhow, now that we're starting a new year, we kind of call them by seasons, right? So this would be season 3, I believe, or maybe 4, but we'll figure that out in the end when I put these together and upload it. But it is episode 31, and I wanted to just say a lot of our first ones were not recorded and you couldn't see us visually. But your beard was significantly smaller than it is now. And at some point, maybe in this season, the crowd out there may see it shorter than it has ever been, because I don't think anybody's ever seen you without a mammoth beard.
It's happened before. I mean, the last time I was fully shaved was not crazy. It was definitely during COVID, so I know that. So it hasn't been like too long, but yeah, it's definitely been I mean, there was a while where you weren't even able to get haircuts for a while, so I feel like that's kind of like what started it going. And yeah, it's definitely been enjoying it.
You gotta love the dedication here, Pat. Keeping it going since the 2020 lockdown. Not bad.
It's keeping it going, but I mean, there is a certain laziness that comes with having a beard. It's because I don't want to fucking have to take care of it. I let my barber do his magic every couple months, and that's about it. So,
well, speaking of the weather out there, I understand why you'd want to keep that for those negative temperatures, and I've heard it's bad. All my family's still in Chicago, as you know, but here in LA, we haven't had. This is the first day the sun's been out. Actually, right now while we're recording it, the sun's been out, but for the last week, it's been rainy, really cold, really dark, really dreary, and it really made me like not want to do anything. So I still remember that I have it better than you guys do in Chicago. And I remember like when you're in Chicago, you definitely have like 4 months at, I'd say, the start of December all the way into like March, where there's nothing. You just feel no kind of excitement about anything. You just want to go to sleep and take a warm shower all the time.
It's good days to go to the movie theater.
That's true.
Appropriate for our talk, which I definitely got to a couple times over our break.
So what have you been seeing?
Yeah, I mean, both of them are completely applicable to our movie today, Metropolis from 1927, which is basically the first full-length sci-fi movie ever made. But based, Damien Chazelle made Whiplash, which was legit one of my favorite movies, along with like Fury Road and Phantom Thread of like that decade. And Babylon wasn't really on my radar. I didn't really know much about it looking forward. I mean, to be honest, I really don't like read up on like what's coming out forward. I just kind of like enjoy like what's coming out now, and then kind of work my way back. I don't pay attention to too much like movie news, like of what's coming up. And so that one kind of, I feel like you talking about it was one of the first times I was hearing about it. But I ended up seeing it, and man, that movie blew me away. That was not quite what I expected, and it was substantially better than all my hopes for it. And if you haven't seen it, it's basically the story of silent filmmaking in the Hollywood area with Brad Pitt, and it was absolutely fantastic. It just definitely blew me away. Margot Robbie's incredible in it. Have you seen it yet?
I have not seen it, and
Okay.
yeah, I feel bad because I was watching. So I've read Hollywood. I don't know anything about Babylon itself other than like what I was hearing about it. I think I told you at one point my girlfriend was like an extra in the film, and so like
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
that's when I first heard about the film, that it was like great cast, right? Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, all these people. And you're like, this is going to be the blockbuster of the year. And she was, in these really cool scenes, got to be in like a scene with Brad Pitt, and like,
Oh, for real? Yeah, I didn't know
yeah,
that. That's great.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
hearing these amazing stories that she would tell me kind of at the time, which was, I don't know, a year ago now or whatever. And it's all under a cloud of secrecy. They like, when they go onto these shoots, they don't ever like tell you the real name of the movie, so you kind of don't
Yeah.
know what you're getting into. But then like they dressed her up in like all these like 30s outfits, and it was in a theater and stuff. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it, to see if I can pick her out. When they released the first image of it, it was like Brad Pitt, and in the background was like her laughing, and it was like amazing. It was the first image that they released from it, and it was like,
Oh, that's awesome. I love it.
totally cool. Yeah, she did that, and then she had like an experience with Oppenheimer, and I thought like her like idea of the two different directors, one being Christopher Nolan and one being Damien Chazelle, were completely different, and I loved hearing that like inside scoop. So anyway, I knew about Babylon that like from that lens, and then I kind of didn't really want to know too much about the story because it seemed to be a little bit aloof when it was first being the trailers came out and stuff like that. Nobody really knew what it was about.
Yeah.
And I love Damien Chazelle. I love all of his films. Whiplash, of course, is probably one of the stars, but then La La Land, of course, I love. So I was really excited about it, and I was very surprised to see that it bombed at the box office the first week. I don't know how it's done since. I haven't really checked up on it, but I had heard mixed opinions from people that I really respect too. So you told me that you thought it was awesome. I think your text to me was Babylon slaps. I know if you say that, that means that you liked it.
That was legit me walking out of the theater for sure. So
okay, gotcha. Yeah. And then my friend Tom, who I respect his opinion, said he didn't really like it, and he loves Damien. It's like La La Land was probably one of his favorite films of all time. Like,
oh wow, yeah.
I was really surprised. But then I wanted to say, like, I've read the book Hollywood Babylon, Kenneth Anger's book, about sort of like the first exposure of Hollywood, behaving poorly, behaving badly. And then, there's a great podcast by Karina Longworth called You Must Remember This, that I love. And she had like a series about that book. And then also Metropolis. Now I'm kind of seeing like, oh, Babylon's part of the story. So it's interesting. I wish I had seen Babylon before we're recording this. I will see it. I just haven't had any time with the holidays and stuff, but I'm glad one of us has, because it seems like all of those things I just mentioned somehow harken back to why Damien Chazelle made the movie Babylon.
Yeah, I mean, the movie itself is very messy. So yeah, like I definitely know like it was pretty divisive amongst critics, and I'm sure regular moviegoers too. Well, not too many of the moviegoers that actually went to go see it. But yeah, it definitely is a messy movie, and it feels very uneven on parts, but like the messiness definitely all worked for me. Like,
how do you mean messy? Just like not really put together story-wise, or?
Well, it's long as shit. It's as long as Avatar. So it's like pushing 3 hours and 15 minutes. So it's definitely got its in-depth scene. I mean, the title credit is like 30 minutes in, which I always love when a movie does that. And it definitely follows a lot of different trajectories and stories and characters in a way that, maybe sometimes feels disjointed when you're watching it. Like I said, it all worked for me for sure. And I think there are some like really in-depth scenes that like just like show the filmmaking process that definitely stood out the most for me, that were absolutely hilarious. I mean, this has like a pretty, to give a little insight, we're definitely gonna be covering a little bit of Scorsese coming up this year, this season, with his very specific editing style. And this movie definitely takes a lot from that vibe. It definitely has a pretty Wolf of Wall Street vibe to it. Margot Robbie's in it. The guy who played Rugrat in Wolf of Wall Street, he was their accountant in their group. He plays like an assistant director in this, and in the first half he's got a pretty prominent role. Fucking hilarious, because he just captures the tone of like this coked up assistant director trying to keep everybody in order, which was basically this circus of filmmaking at the time. I mean, I was just kind of really taken aback by how much I enjoyed it. But like I said, like it is messy, so I could definitely see how like it tried a lot of people's patience, but definitely worked for me. And there is, going into my next segment, I watched Avatar again. And this is basically gonna be a segment of the show where I talk about Avatar and Darren rolls his eyes. We're just gonna keep that going. Avatar, the new Avatar, I watched it again. Fucking great. Substantially
you saw
better.
it twice?
What's up?
Have you seen it twice now?
Yeah, I've seen it twice now.
Wow.
It's fantastic. James Cameron, obviously no surprise, made a great sequel. He's definitely done that in the past. And I think I mentioned in the past, like I wasn't like all in on Avatar, I was all in on Cameron. With this like new movie, I'm definitely all in on Avatar because of the world he's trying to create. He's going to have it his way. That movie's making like $2 billion. So he's going to get his 4 sequels that he wants. And so this is obviously the beginning of that. And it definitely sets up a lot of threads that I think are going to be pretty great. One with, and this isn't giving anything away, with Sigourney Weaver basically being the Jesus Christ character of the story. So
wow. Yeah. This, you know, I have to say that, yeah, if you've listened to this podcast before, you know that I don't really love Avatar and I kind of don't understand it, but I have to say,
a lot of people don't. Yeah.
Well, I only seen it one time and I saw it in the theaters, but it sounds like it has a lot of like depth to the story that I maybe missed the first time by just like, you know, all of the technological advances, which sometimes that overshadows a movie and what they're trying to communicate. And maybe that's what it did to me at that point. Because I also have a friend out here who's a director that I've worked with before, and he is like a gigantic James Cameron fan, just like you are. And he's like all in on Avatar. He's just, I can't believe that I wouldn't like it. He's somebody I respect and that likes films, and you as well. So like, I'm going back. I already talked to my girlfriend about it. Like, we have to watch Avatar. We have to like see what we're missing. And then I have to go see Avatar 2 while it's in the theaters. I just have to, you know?
A lot of it, I mean, to be clear, a lot of it is spectacle. He is a big budget blockbuster filmmaker. So you're not going to find a type of nuance that is in a lot of the movies that we love, but you know, I'm all for both. He's a broad storyteller, but he's a broad storyteller that employs technical achievement like nobody else. And he's just done that, you know, his entire fucking career. And it's clear, like with this one, to me at least, with this second one, because this is going to be the end of his career with movies. Like he was almost out on movies even before going into Avatar. So he's definitely dedicated the rest of his filmmaking career to Avatar. So there's not really going to be anything else other than that from movies from him, at least. And so that's, I mean, just as an achievement alone in that with his career, it definitely blows me away. But there was, so that's my pro Avatar stance right now. But I got onto that because this isn't giving anything away. There's a montage at the end of Babylon where it's like basically a tribute to film. And if you've seen it, it's a little weird looking. It feels a little out of place. It almost feels like a tribute to movies that you would see at like that on the Oscars or something, where it's like a whole diverse set of like short clips of film, like from the 20s all the way to now. And they show like near the end of it, a clip from like Terminator 2. And they even like show a clip from Avatar in that near the end, because it's obviously the most recent. And it just definitely made a thread throughout, like from the silent film era to including the science fiction spectacle of Metropolis, all the way up to like the science fiction spectacle of Avatar. So I thought that was like such a perfect capper to the couple movies that I was able to go see over the,
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea about that. Sounds like, like Purple Rose of Cairo for like Woody Allen was like a tribute to movies, right? Like a lot of directors will do that. We spoke about it last week, or whenever we filmed our last podcast. We talked about The Fabelmans, which is like another tribute to the movies, right? Sounds like that's a bit of a theme going on right now, which I like. I love that. And everybody did it in their own like fun way. I don't know if you've ever seen Purple Rose of Cairo, but it's one of my favorite Woody Allen films. And just like that film in general, it's kind of like the thing that can always take you out of like a bad situation or take you out of your life and remind you that like there's good things in the world that, you can escape through the movies. And that's kind of the way it is with music as well. Of course, anything in the arts. It's really a beautiful thing. I like that. Speaking of great films, if you don't mind me doing my segue up to a film I saw, and I don't know if you had seen this, and not to spend too much time because I think, again, Metropolis that we're going to talk about today is such a great movie to speak of while talking about Babylon, because it has, a lot of things that parallel as far as the silent film era, expressionist films and things like that. But I would say that a movie that's totally different than any of the films we're talking about is The Whale, which I saw at the Chinese theater over here over the break, which I absolutely loved. Darren Aronofsky's a guy that's kind of like a hit or miss. It's almost hit or miss. It's not like in the middle for me. Like I didn't like Mother. I know a lot of people love Mother, but
you did not like Mother?
No, well, I mean, I can't say that I didn't like the movie. I mean, you have to like what he did, but I couldn't really get on board with watching a film for entertainment like that. It's a little much, especially the baby eating scenes and stuff like that towards the end. But I will say that like the movies that do hit for him hit really hard and really well. The Wrestler is one that we watched after seeing The Whale. So my girlfriend's like, you got to go see The Whale with me. I've seen it already, but I really want to see it with you. So we did go see it together. And I'm like, before I even saw it, I'm like, I bet you this is Aronofsky's sort of tale of like the person who can't get out of his own way, right? And it's sort of the way that The Wrestler is, and that was obviously a huge hit for Darren Aronofsky. And I love Black Swan. I'm not like a huge fan of like Pie or like Requiem for a Dream and things like that, but there are those movies, again, The Wrestler and The Whale, that are just complete slam dunks, complete home runs for me. And I love The Whale a lot. Brendan Fraser gets all the credit that he deserves for that film.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, I have not seen it. It's which shocks me actually, because it's definitely been at the top of my list. Aronofsky, I like him quite a bit. The Wrestler is by far my favorite movie of his. I've watched that plenty of times because I love just what it kind of represents, the type of character study. I think I mentioned, I was talking about the writer of that movie, Robert Siegel. He was on a podcast recently just talking about that, but he had written that film, and I absolutely love The Wrestler. So, and Brendan Fraser is obviously somebody that I grew up with plenty of admiration. And so I'm definitely very happy to see his kind of big comeback. And it definitely is, like I said, I haven't seen it, but it's definitely sounding like he's going to get Oscar nomination for it. So,
I mean, how about it like a Tarantino and then also an Aronofsky? They just like have a way of reviving actors' careers that we love. We just don't, nobody gave them another chance in their later careers. Both of those directors have done that and done that very well.
So you watched it, there's like a double feature with The Wrestler, you said?
Kind of, yeah. So my girlfriend had never seen The Wrestler, and when I told her about it, she was like, well, let's watch The Wrestler because I'd like to,
nice.
See another thing like The Whale, because she loved The Whale so much, and then she just loved The Wrestler. I mean, she was just like blown away. And I hadn't seen it in a while. Both movies, I would just say this and not giving anything away, but they do end and sort of like let the viewer decide, kind of like where the story goes after that. And I always love that too. It's like it's not giving you necessarily like a final ribbon on it, like this is what happens. It's kind of like, well, you can kind of decide. And it's more about, like you said, like the journey of the movie and the process of like learning about these characters than anything else. It takes place in like kind of one location the entire time. And it's like when movies do that, kind of like Rope, Hitchcock's Rope, it's like to get the audience to be engaged through that story, that's one hell of a feat to do. And The Whale certainly delivers that way.
I'm just thinking, I didn't realize it was, were there like a lot of continuous shots when you said it was kind of set in one location, or just kind of feels like it's kind of set at his home, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I mean, there's like maybe one or two like shots like outside of his home, but that's it. Like,
okay, yeah,
it's really all.
I can imagine that working really well for it. That's awesome.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I haven't seen Rope in a long time. It's definitely a good one to revisit. Staying with Aronofsky, I think the only movie I haven't seen is and I've always been wanting to check it out, is Noah.
I haven't seen. No, yeah, right. Obviously, a classic tale.
It feels like the outlier, just in terms of the type of movie, but and the story, but maybe not. But yeah, that's the only one that I've never really seen. I've always been pretty interested. I've always heard like pretty good things about it. A lot of people had low expectations for it when it came out, and probably still do. But then every time I hear somebody talk about it, they say they're pretty positive on it.
Aronofsky has a way of really talking about religion and kind of going for the jugular with it in some of his films. So
yeah, he's and then speaking of Mother, I remember Mother got the coveted like 0% audience score, which is it's coveted because that means that you did something special to make that many people of the general audience going.
But
public.
The critics loved it, right?
I think it was kind of split. But yeah, in general, it's usually something where it's like a lot of critics will recommend it, and then it gets like a coveted 0% from user score. They're like, yeah, the general public doesn't like my movie, which is a good thing. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of times too, you see like a lot of these, like even Metropolis, like when they open, a lot of people are up in arms about it and they don't really love it. But then
terrible reviews, bad reviews when it came out.
Stands the test of time. Then eventually, you kind of have to just like wait and see. And I will say, based on that, gosh, I forget my thought now. It had to do with Aronofsky. Oh well, we'll come back to it. But yeah, like when you open a film and it doesn't do well, just wait. So let's see what time thinks of it.
I mean, good art stands the test of time. That's cliche for a reason. I feel like people say that, so because it's definitely true.
So should we get into discussing our main film today, Metropolis? I believe this is going to be, as you said at the start, a series, right? So it's a Fritz Lang series.
Well, we're going to do a double feature. We're doing Metropolis today, which, man, this movie is bonkers. So I'm happy we got a chance to see it. I've seen clips before, but I've actually never watched the entire movie.
Really?
I've seen plenty of like clips over the years, and definitely watched part of it, but I definitely never sat down and watched the whole movie. And especially not the 2.5 hour restored version, which I think I read it was only in like 2008 that full version was like found. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, and that's why kind of like a lot of times they have to have explainer shots for different things when you're watching the film. Also, you can totally tell the one that is found footage because it's really grainy.
A lot more grainy.
Yeah, and it doesn't do the full frame. Because it was found on 16 millimeter, I believe it opens up, the film opens up letting you know about the restoration. If you're watching it on Criterion Channel, you can learn a little bit more about it and everything like that. But yeah, this film is regarded as one of the greatest films of all time. And if you've watched any clip shows about, the movies you need to see, this is always in there. You've always seen the robot and what the robot looks like. It's also heavily regarded as one of the best science fiction films of all time. So it hits all the great marks, right? Science fiction, early science fiction, German Expressionist film, just beautiful art decoration for all the scenes. I mean, this was a very expensive film to make. And then it's got this great story of like the hierarchy, the rich versus the poor, and can they meet? And then the great beginning idea, and just to have the great theme showcased at the very beginning of the film, and you know exactly what you're getting into, right? Like the mediator between the head and the hands must be the heart. And I've always loved that saying, right? Like, okay, like people can think and they can do whatever they want. People can do a lot with their hands. They can work, they can think, but what's in between that? And it's the heart. It's the heart of a human being. It's the empathy. It's all the things that we talk about on this podcast that connect these two things. You know, without that, it's just really chaos. And what ensues in this film, but also what a cautionary tale that still happens to this day. This film's from the 20s, and you're still talking about all of these themes all the way to 2023, which is when we're talking about this film.
Yeah, I mean, that was very eloquently put. I think that the things that make it stand the test of time is, as you said, the story and the spectacle. Like, I mean, the images in this movie are fucking great. I mean, this is 1927, and the images of like the city, the machine in the factories, the choreography like of the workers working the machines, and then the actual machine men themselves. It has a look that like it's really crazy that you can look at this. I mean, we're pushing 100 years old on it now, and it still looks like this wonderful piece of art when movies were like still in its infancy. Like they didn't even know like what they were doing half the time, especially in a sci-fi movie. Like I said, I think I saw this was like the first like feature length sci-fi movie. Everything else before this was like short movies. So, but yeah, so like the visuals and like you said, the story, which well, I'll get into it in later in just terms of like how genius the execution of the story is. But what's your like when did you first kind of get into this movie or first see it?
So same thing with you, you know, always heard about this film for so long.
Okay.
Definitely over 10 years ago I first saw it.
Oh, you did. Okay, nice.
And blown away. But you know, we've talked about it before when we cover like silent films. I think that like I can get into that a little bit more, or at least I was like more excited about going in to watch a silent movie or something from the 50s or something. Like older film to me has always been something that I kind of gravitate towards more than like kind of newer films that are made. And so that maybe doesn't surprise me that this is the first time of you watching it all the way through, just judging by what we've talked about in the films that we like.
Yeah.
But I don't doubt that it was always on your list of like, I got to see Metropolis someday. And when I saw it over 10 years ago, it blown away by all of the things that we talked about, the themes, just like the look of it. You know, you never see anything like that. And we talk about silent film a lot when we talk about people's expressions, right? And that has to do a lot. And one of my main things that stuck out to me then as in now is the way that the actors, you know, I don't know if it had to do something with the fact that they're German, you know, if it had to do the fact that it was just a time period and you had to kind of overact and overexpress yourself during these times to get the message across. But man, the woman who plays Maria, who is one of the main characters, but she's got a dual role as she becomes sort of the machine that they're building in the likeness of the woman who has since passed, that was kind of a tragic love story between the creator of the world and the inventor. And so this woman, Marie, is kind of there to provide hope, right? She's this kind of angelic character, but they eventually, as we see, use her ideals and her innocence against the workers. And again, you'll talk about I'm sure you'll talk about the story a little bit more, but the Marie, she has two played by Bridget Helm is her name. Maybe Brigitte, I don't know.
Brigitte, yeah, definitely. If it isn't, it sounds cooler, so we're going with that.
Right, Brigitte. But she is amazing. She has to play this like innocence, and when we first see her, she's with all of the sort of children of the workers to kind of see how the other half lives, and she's the shepherd of the children, right? To talk in biblical terms. And again, she sort of is like the hope for everybody. And then when she transforms into the machine and kind of has to be like this diabolical machine, she has this like thing she does with her eye that's like cocky, you know, and she's just like, she does these like movements like this, and she is fucking awesome. And then she does this like whole like sexual dance where like the, you know, all the people are like enamored, and man, that scene is insane too. Like to get like how people are easily swayed by like sex and different things, and like this film has everything. It tells the story of so much.
I love it. I mean, I have it right here in my notes. Brigitte Helm, crazy good performance.
Yeah.
No, it was her.
Well
Like,
said. Well said. Yeah.
by the end of the movie, it was definitely me watching her. It was one of the most enjoyable parts because, like you said, the dual roles and the two. It's not just like two regular people she's playing. She's playing basically a almost like a goddess type figure. So, like you said, she gives kind of these sermons to the lowly workers who are being ruled by the rich billionaires up above. All these workers in the factory toiling away, literally like pushing the clock as a way to like get through their day. And so she gives these sermons to speak of the mediator, as you mentioned, the mediator being between the hand and the head and the hands, and that being the heart. And so her role, like as that kind of like soft figure, giving inspiration to these workers, and then as you mentioned, she gets basically turned into this. I didn't fully understand. They basically cloned her, right?
Yeah. So really, what they're doing is the inventor to tell that story of the transformation.
Yeah.
There's an inventor, and then there's the person who built the city, and they sort of need each other. They work off of each other and they help each other. But the issue and I guess the challenge between the two men is that they shared a love of a woman named Helen, I believe her name was. They kind of use the word Hel, and they don't like spell it out when you see it on the title cards. So this is something that maybe you missed on the first watch. There's a lot to take.
Yeah, I definitely didn't pick up on the them trying to create a past love of them.
And that's why this movie has it all, because the person who created the Metropolis and who's, basically like
Fredersen,
say the president,
Fredersen.
He had a son with this woman who died. But the inventor who invented this machine invented the machine as a replacement for her, because they both lost something. They both were in love with this woman, but the inventor lost her, and then the president of the city, Fredersen, had a son with her, but she had passed away. I believe it was in childbirth. So that both men are deeply troubled by the fact that they lost her. And so the inventor decides to make a person in her likeness, and that's this machine. And so that I believe, if you're saying you may have missed that.
Okay, no, I mean, I just didn't realize it was really just the intention. I didn't realize that was the intention of creating that of the machine man that ended up being a clone of Maria.
But the other part of it is that the inventor is angry that he lost this woman to like the president of the Metropolis and the creator of the Metropolis. So to get back at him, he keeps on telling him he's going to use this machine, and even Fredersen says, I'm sorry, it's Fredersen, right? I just want to get that right.
Yeah,
Fredersen is like, well, let's make this machine tell the workers that they need to double down and continue on and do their thing, but to like create havoc because he's pissed that he lost this woman to Fredersen. The inventor decides to backstab him and tell the robot, no, you're going to tell these workers to rise up against them and create all this chaos, because obviously the head and the hands need each other, which is something they don't realize, right? The people who are at the top don't realize that they need the workers to get it done, but they seem to be able to influence them with money or power or whatever. And these people think, well, we're under that thumb. We're never going to get out from under it. So we better just do what we're told. Otherwise, poverty comes upon us, death, terrible things if we don't just comply. But eventually, if you're under enough scrutiny and you're under enough manipulation for long enough, you rise up. And so the issue here is, now that they've got Helen's likeness being put together through this girl, Marie, who Fredersen's son fell in love with, and she's this angelic character, and all of the workers love her. if they can trade her look and her likeness for the robots, this robot can go down to the workers and influence them because they've already got the built-in likeness of Marie, who everybody loves. And again, the inventor is saying to Fredersen, yeah, don't worry, we're going to have her go down and tell all the workers to keep going and keep charge. But instead, he double crosses them and tells them, no, tell the workers to rise up.
Yeah, I definitely missed part of the intention because when they started sending, because at one point Fredersen, the owner, president, whatever you want to call him, he agrees to it. He agrees to having the clone Marie, the machine man, have the workers revolt. And I was a little kind of thrown off by that because that's bad for business. The last thing you want is your workers not being pacified. So okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. I mean, I love the component of like his son Fredersen, which is a great name. He's the one who discovers all the chaos in the factory, in his father's factory, and all the way that the workers are basically being fed to the grinding mouth to feed the machines and keep all the work going for the rich people above. And so like his character is pretty interesting to me. Is it's not really practical that the president's son, the boss's son, is going to be the one sacrificing himself and putting himself in that position.
But I love that.
But it definitely, it definitely works for it. It was just, it definitely works for the story itself. And
right, he has more empathy than like his father, who has like none, right? And that's the thing, is like his father is the businessman who realizes to be in business, you need to like get these workers to continue to work, to invoke fear in them at times and different things like that. But his son is just like, really out there saying this is not right. I can't watch, they're my brothers. He calls them his brothers. I can't watch my brothers. They're all like collapsing from how hard they're working. And he decides to take it on himself, to be the one to do, like he does the switcheroo, and he becomes the worker and kind of gets to walk a mile in their shoes. And yeah, like it's an unlikely person because he could possibly have all of this kingdom to himself. But instead, his heart is the one who is really leading his charge of why he wants to connect and understand the workers better.
Yeah, he definitely had a pretty sweet setup at the beginning. They're at like the Eternal Garden, and he's basically getting his choice of all the women for sale at the time. So it's like he's definitely in a position where he could just kick back and hang out with all the women and have them feed him grapes at the time. So I guess that's not what you would do in modern times. But.
I mean, this film was before the Hays Code, which, would be restricting audiences from seeing certain things. And if you think about it, there's a lot of like kind of like sexual scenes almost showing.
Okay, yeah. So like I was saying, so the original Maria, she gives the sermons talking about the mediator to calm the workers. She gets cloned. It's Clone Maria. And so her sermon is basically that striptease, which is the fucking wildest striptease I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, it's in the 20s,
Yeah, I mean, it's wild if you saw somebody doing it today, but like it looked insane. I mean, and like I said, the performance of Brigitte Helm is incredible. Like for her to pull off both of those roles and then do the physicality of the clone Maria was insane. I loved watching it because it was incredible.
Oh yeah, and I mean that's what I'm saying. Like because I don't think the Hays Code would have allowed for Hollywood to be, seeing again. This is a German film, but at the same time, like if it was going to be seen in the States, it wouldn't have been able to seen that way. It probably would have been even more heavily edited than it was. I think it was edited, and those scenes were taken out in the beginning. Just purely for time back in the day. But if this film, Fritz Lang ended up having a really decent career in Hollywood after this, but this is him making his films in Germany early on, like I said, before the Hays Code, when you'd be restricted and you couldn't show a lot of nudity, couldn't talk about sex and things like that. Because that's such a big part of the story when she does this dance, and again she's really animated and she's like almost half naked. That's kind of mirroring, right, like a story of Babylon, right, like where like a goddess kind of can come and like influence a bunch of people based on the sexuality of, but as we know, that's never a good thing to be involved with, because all of a sudden terrible things start happening to you. But you get roped in, like what are humans interested in, right? Greed, money, sex. They even talk about the 7 deadly sins at some point, don't they?
So there's a brief segment where they show the 7 deadly sins, but then like after shit starts hitting the fan and the workers start to like actually go and destroy the machines, it shows the 7 deadly sins actually coming out, and there's like a skeleton with a sword leading it, and it looks straight out of Evil Dead from Sam Raimi.
Awesome, right? It just looks so awesome.
Like, it's not a super long segment. It's like maybe 10 seconds overall, but like it looks so much like Evil Dead in terms of like just the aesthetics and like the movement of the skeleton itself. I was like, there's no way that he did not get some influence from this scene for Evil Dead.
Sure. That's a good point, because a lot of it too, like there's a lot of like double exposures and things like that, like a lot of good, amazing early film tricks in this film. I mean, if you're like a student of film watching this, I can't imagine that you don't like, even now, like a lot of those scenes when like things like kind of disappear and appear, you're like, how did they do that? Like you still don't, it's the magic of film, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the tricks were primitive at the like now they seem like, but at the same time, it's like they almost seem like more innovative than a lot of stuff now. It's like now you're just like, that's just a CGI character that a computer put in to the screen, whereas like stuff before, you actually had to play tricks with the physical film sometimes. And yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I mean, like I was saying, like seeing this movie as a spectacle, and this will be the last time I talk about it, but to see like Avatar like 100 years later, to see where sci-fi and especially the aesthetics of sci-fi and special effects have gone, I just thought it added so much to it. Yeah, like, I mean, again, like Brigitte Helm, like her performance is definitely one of my favorite parts of watching this movie. So
yeah, and I think that when we go into like talking about a movie that encompasses it all, right? There's like a love story between the two that I was talking about. That's how I understood that scene, is that the inventor really wanted to kind of get back at the person who's the president, Fredersen. Yeah, and it really wanted to get back at him because he got what he wanted. He got this one, and he's like the mad scientist, right? He's like the mad inventor, because he's like, he lost a hand and all this stuff because he's so dedicated. The storytelling is so great because he's so dedicated to making this this robot who's going to be in her likeness. It even says in like, give me 24 hours and she'll be back. We'll have her, because when you first get introduced to the character, it is just a robot. It's not flesh and blood looking, but that's when they use Maria to be the likeness of, and they do some sort of like science experiment, which is so great, with like all of the pulsating vibes and things going, and then this transformation happens where all of a sudden the robot is flesh and blood, although as we just talked about, like has these tics and stuff that you could still tell it's a robot,
yeah.
But all done so that it could influence the story of how they're going to now have these workers revolt. Because again, I think what is happening through a lot of stories of this feudal system is that people don't realize that they need each other. They need to come, they need to come and meet each other halfway. And really that's what Fredersen's son is trying to do. He's like, these people can't just be looked at as nothing. They need to have rights, and talk about like equal rights for women in the workforce. I mean, these things are topics that we're still talking about and that are still not being taken care of in 2023. And that's why this story is such a good thing for people to see, because it's age old and it seems to be ongoing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think part of the genius of this movie and the incredible part of it is that it still works like 100 years later, is that it can be read in a lot of different ways in terms of the way the social structure works. I mean, you could definitely read this as a socialist, as a Marxist, or as like a capitalist.
I believe it was in its day.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that it still kind of works that way, the fact that is able to transcend all those, and it really allows the viewer to kind of read it how they want to read it. Is definitely the biggest trick of the movie that I think works the best about it. I mean, I love so much that you can read it in those three different ways, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, because again, I think it was flagged for that, that it might have been like pro-communist. I don't really feel that way. I just feel like it's like, again, talking about the heart, the empathy about it. I think the story is more about like giving a shit about people, and look at all these things we do to each other, and in the end, everyone just kind of wants to be understood. Everybody wants to have some health and happiness in their life, and there's really like, when you're up high and you're this person that controls everything, there's this idea that you have to continue to like keep people down, so that they'll comply and that they'll work hard, and eventually people get sick of that shit, and they're gonna say fuck you, and they're gonna want to kick your fucking ass. And that's what happens, I always love that shit when like the levee finally breaks. There's like people in business, man, I'll tell you, they'll be like, yeah, but there's more work to come, or they'll dangle that carrot, so you just continue to hop along. You're like, I need the money, but I hear like later on there's going to be some more work for me, so I'll deal with this bullshit. It's like, fuck that. Like, you got to try to see what people are doing to you. There's a lot of manipulation in business and things like that. And like, again, this story is age old and it still happens now. It's like, it's good to see these films so that you can kind of like step back and say, whoa, yeah, that's kind of like how it is. When you're at the top, you can't really sympathize or empathize with anybody at the bottom. And when you're at the bottom, you feel like there's no way out.
Perfect way to put it, man. We need you as a spokesperson more often. I love it. Can we talk about the score, man? Whoever did the score, total John Williams vibe throughout the whole movie. I fucking loved it. It was incredible.
Totally. There's something I don't know, and I was thinking about this, and I guess I should have researched it. Maybe somebody out there knows. Was this the original score, like, or was this like recomposed? I don't really know.
So I watched it on the Criterion channel, your Criterion channel.
Nice.
to give our listeners a little insider. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I'm assuming it is. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm assuming it's the original score that was maybe recomposed, because it sounded really good. It certainly didn't sound like
that's what I mean. It didn't sound
so
dated. Yeah.
Maybe it was a re-recorded version of the original that was maybe transferred over. Because like we said, we watched the 2.5 hour version, which really didn't exist before 2008. And so it obviously they had to do something for the score to for the full 2.5 hours.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, you and I are, we try to get as much knowledge about this as we can. That's why if you, the listener, knows, I would love to know, is this, we can obviously Google it after we're done with this session, but like, let us know. The other thing that I love about sometimes scores, when there are lost, or maybe that somebody wants to have a different take on it. For instance, Dracula, like the Philip Glass version, that score to me is more like creepy and haunting than any score I've ever heard. And I love that score, and I prefer it to the original. And that happens all the time too. I believe another Fritz Lang film, isn't it? Or no, it's F.W. Murnau. But that, Count Orlok, there's a ton of different versions of that. For that, Nosferatu. Yeah, there's a ton of different versions of the score for that. So that's why, like, you conjures it up, right? This movie's so old, like, and they've definitely lost some footage over time. I don't know exactly if this is the original score, if it was re-recorded or what.
I mean, I'm seeing multiple ones on IMDb. Maximano Cobra is maybe being the original, but then I have multiple re-recordings from like 1984 through 2005. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm sure
that doesn't answer our question, but
well, no, I'm sure with Criterion they try to do their best to like give the original feel of the film. So
But like I was saying, John Williams definitely took a lot from the original score, at least the inspiration, because it definitely had a lot of vibes from that, and I could definitely see him. Again, like a lot of half the filmmakers that we love were probably pretty heavily influenced by this movie. So, and the score just works so well throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, that's the thing, is that I said it at the beginning, I said it throughout, like this has it all. There's like a love story, there's people rising up, there's beautiful art direction. We've talked about it a little bit, but just like the style of this is just insane. It's like the German Expressionist film. There's wonderful acting. And I think for anybody that has not seen this, don't wait too long to see this film, because it's just got so much to offer. I don't know if much had survived from this film. And one thing that I was always curious about, and I had looked it up a long time ago, was like the robot, right? Like the robot had to have has to survive. And I don't think it did. I don't think that, because it's like when I go to the Academy Museum out here in LA, like they have like Rosebud, right, from Citizen Kane, and like you get to see like the original, and it's like, is there a better movie prop, I guess like the Maltese Falcon and different things like that, like the other MacGuffins, but there's these things from films that you just like hope exist out there somewhere. And I don't think there is the robot had survived the years, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, having the original robot would definitely be up there with the Maltese Falcon and maybe the original Bruce from Jaws, if somebody actually has like the original entire shark from Jaws.
I have seen one of the only I think it's the last remaining models of Bruce is actually in the Academy Museum, but that's the last one that they had that survived, and it's hanging above. It's at the very top of the Academy Museum. It's hanging from the ceiling. It's fucking awesome, dude. You'd love it.
Talk about a trifecta if you had all three of those. My God.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about like, there's an alternate universe where, so I mentioned before I saw the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, like at a church with like a full symphony when I was like 7.
Yeah.
And and that put me down the path of probably being, the horror fan, the horror hound that I am today. I feel like there was an alternate universe. If I saw this, like with a full symphony, like in a church when I was 7, like sci-fi would be like my complete jam today more than anything else. So, I mean, it still is, but it would definitely be at the top because of how influential this movie is, and seeing it probably at a young age with that type of experience. I mean, being able to see it in a theater now even would be great. So
I know. Yeah. I feel like with 100 years coming up, right, it should be something that they re-release in theaters, and I'm sure they will. There's nothing like seeing an old film like this, especially a silent one, like it deserves your attention. It deserves, we talk about it all the time, putting your phone down and like really trying to focus in, but like, especially a silent film, if you don't, you miss it all,
Talk about smashing the technology in early in this movie, and all I was thinking about was how the phones have come along since then. So
totally. Yeah. I love that you this is like your first watch through fully. I'm glad that we decided to talk about this today, because I've always loved this film. It is a big one, as far as like greatest films of all time, and it does have some themes that I think like resonate in our lives that we can understand, or that we've experienced in our own personal lives.
Hell yeah, love it. And just found out, just getting in enter the public domain this week.
Yeah. So what does that mean? I saw that too. Like, does that mean that you can?
Public domain means anybody can use it for any reason whatsoever. It's like public art.
Wow.
So like you can screen it for a showing for people. You can clip it for an art project, or show it clips on YouTube if you want.
Like basically you can use it for monetary gain if you want to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just it's available. It's not copyrighted by anybody. There's nobody who is going to be like telling you to take it down if you're just utilizing a piece from it. So yeah, I mean, it's a time thing. I don't know all the rules on it, but it has to do with how long copyrights last, and then if they expire, it's just available for the public to use.
I remember that was like something that happened to It's a Wonderful Life, like when I was a kid, and they were like, oh yeah, like it's on every channel this Christmas because nobody owns it.
Right.
But I think eventually somebody does pick it up, right? And
then so anybody can watch it for free really anywhere now. So I mean, I watch, like we said, we watch it on Criterion. This is another plug for a Criterion channel because it's fucking great, but you can definitely watch it on YouTube for free if you want. So
yeah, I don't know, and usually Criterion, I don't know if you saw this or not. I didn't really look into it because I didn't have much time to go into the extra features, but usually Criterion does a really good job of having like extra featurettes and things like that. new and old like footage of talking about the film with scholars or the filmmakers themselves. You know, like a track of uh, commentary and things like that. So this film especially might have a lot of that, and I would I've seen a lot of the things that they've put together for different films that I just get a lot from, especially Ulmer's Detour, which is one of my favorite.
Mm.
It's always been like one of my favorite film noirs, but it was always like such a shitty copy when you were like a kid. Like you would watch it and it was not very good. They have so many cool featurettes on that film that you can watch about the restoration and making the film that I just love going back and seeing. So I'm not sure if Metropolis has that, but if it does, I'm going to go looking back and see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely want to check out Ridley Scott. He says any commentary or interviews or anything for Blade Runner, because Blade Runner kind of like is the most recent kind of modern, not adaptation, but like it definitely tries
Like
to
dystopia.
Yeah, it just in terms of the aesthetics of like what the city looks like. Obviously the story isn't really that similar, but like visually showing like a future city, Blade Runner would be the most accurate,
Constantly raining.
yeah, the accurate depiction of like what we try to do in terms of like being influenced by Metropolis from like at the time like 70 or 80 years before. So
Speaking of oh, I'm sorry.
no, as I just like I said, I mean the visual style of Blade Runner is so cool, and it's so clearly influenced by this movie. So I'd love to hear more talk about that.
Yeah, no, and speaking of Ridley Scott, that made me think of what I was going to say earlier that I couldn't think of, and more so about his brother, right? Dennis Scott,
Tony Scott.
So I'm sorry, Tony Scott. I have been fucking loving Tom Cruise's bullshit lately. Loving it. Like the jumping out of the plane shit, like the wing walker shit. And like I haven't seen Top Gun Maverick, but of course I want to. I love Top Gun. I haven't seen that yet, but that's not like the first movie that I go to the theater for. However, Tom Cruise is making like the biggest splash for like why I should. Every time he does this thing, he's talking about the audience and like he's like, it's not about us, it's about the audience, about how you're going to experience it for the fun. And I'm like, dude, I'm kind of loving Tom Cruise lately because like all he wants, and he's doing this insane shit, and all he wants is to like have good marketing material so people will get in their butts in the seats and go to the theater to see a movie, albeit his movie, but still just film in general. I feel like he really cares about film and is like loving marketing this. He did it for Top Gun and now he's doing it for Mission Impossible. I don't know if you've seen any of this, but
I mean, you just open up a whole can of worms, man. Modern Tom Cruise is one of my favorites. He's a lunatic, and that's what I love about it. Like he's an alien who is obsessed with making movies. Like I don't know what his personal life is. I don't really want to know because it's clearly nothing but like being obsessed with doing these psychotic stunts for his own movies. But no, I'm completely on board with you there. I mean, I definitely saw Top Gun Maverick. It was very fun to watch it in the theater. It was great. I mean, the Mission Impossible movies, I think, are definitely some of the best modern action movies of all time. And it's pretty insane, like how that franchise has just steadily gotten better. Like the last one, Mission Impossible Fallout, the one with Henry Cavill, where he's got the beard stash that I mentioned before.
Right.
That is a fucking great action movie. I love it. And
I'm never like the one to first see these films, but of course, like the original with like Brian De Palma directing it, I was interested in that. But like going from that film, you're right, to like where it is now. Wow.
So which ones have you seen other than the original?
None.
None of them. Okay.
I just know that they're popular as hell,
Yeah. So his director is Christopher McQuarrie. He wrote The Usual Suspects. That's kind of how he's got started. And
another great film.
Yeah, that was kind of his beginning, and they kind of started making movies together with he's done two of the last Mission Impossible movies, and it's just they work, him and Tom Cruise, they like are just the same type of crazy when it comes to the type of movies that they want to make. So yeah.
Man, and talk about like, Usual Suspect is like a crime caper, then like add extra like shit, like if it's anything like that and the writing behind that, and then all of a sudden you've got all of this action stuff. I can't imagine that they're not films.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm all for seeing the next round of Mission Impossible, because like I said, they are transcending kind of like action movies, and it largely is because of Tom Cruise and his obsession with doing his own shit. Like he's already broken a couple ankles, like while he filmed the last one or the one before. I think the last one he broke an ankle while he was doing his long ass run, which I love. The running montage you can find on YouTube, where it's just 10 minutes of Tom Cruise running straight with all of his different movies cut together, where it's just him running nonstop for like 10 minutes. It's great.
Yeah, totally. I love that shit. He's 60. Tom Cruise is 60.
Yeah, so I think it really is him that puts it over the top, because like who else, what other action star are we going to have like after Tom Cruise is gone, or when he stops making these?
I don't know. The Rock.
Like, you can keep The Rock. I don't want The Rock.
I know, but I mean, for sure, I feel the same way. That's what I'm saying. I fucking love Tom Cruise lately. I always have. Anybody who says they don't love Tom Cruise is kind of like, they're just pissed off because Tom Cruise can do it all. Some of his early 80s films, you can see through the acting a little bit, and then when he goes and we get into The Color of Money and it starts to get a little bit more serious roles and things like that, it's like, okay, but like he is now at a point in his career where I think he's just like, what can I do next that's just going to beat whatever I just did last time? And this clip that I saw of him like doing this jump for Mission Impossible that he's touting, the director that you just said that wrote The Usual Suspects, he's like, the only thing that scares me more than this like last thing that we just did is like what we have planned for like the next mission. Oh, what the fuck,
The only thing I'm scared is what Tom's going to make me do next.
Right. Pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. I'm big into Tom Cruise lately. That's all I want to say. Just and purely for the fact that I think that the guy just really loves films and really wants people to go to see films, which is what we're doing, which is why we do this podcast. We love fucking film. We want more people to go to the theater and enjoy it because it's pure joy. That's what it is.
Hell yeah. Now I'm going to need to watch that montage of him playing pool with Warren Zevon from Color of Money, now that we mention it. So I'm going to.
But I don't even know what that is.
When was the last time you saw Color of Money?
A long time. Zevon's in Color of Money?
No, he's not in it. He's in a there's the pool playing montage with Werewolves of London playing over.
Oh, okay. The song. I thought for a second you were saying Zevon.
No.
Like, how did I miss that?
No. We would have been. That would be our background for our Zoom calls if
Zevon
was in Color of Money. So
100%. Oh man, that's so funny.
Love it.
I was going to say, before we go, I know we have to talk about our song of the week. Are we done talking about Metropolis? Do you have any other last thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I loved watching this. Like I said, this is the part one of our double feature. We're doing M for our next episode, which I'm very excited to watch. I know you're a big fan of that one, so I definitely want to dive in and see, because there's only a couple of years after this movie. So it'll definitely see like this is like M almost was almost his follow-up to Metropolis. So
Peter Lorre, superb.
It's your guy. Love it.
Pretty fucked up subject matter too, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, so thank you guys for listening about Metropolis, and it's awesome. This is another great year of Remainders. Super happy to have you here with us. I'll always love to hear back from you, some feedback. What are you guys liking? What are you loving? We always talk about different things in our lives, and I think that's part of this, getting to know us a little bit. I want to talk briefly about a couple of things that I did other than movies that I enjoyed. A long time ago, I went to, this has to do with James Cameron. A long time ago, I went to go see the Titanic exhibit in Las Vegas. So I could give a shit about gambling, and I kind of hate like Las Vegas in general. Like probably the worst place on earth that I've been to is Las Vegas. But when I was there, I was like, I'm gonna go to the museums instead. My cousin was getting married, and instead of like going and doing all the crazy shit you would do, I just went to the museums, and the Luxor had this amazing Titanic exhibit. And they opened the same thing in LA, and my girlfriend had not seen it. The LA experience was a little less cool than it was in Vegas. In Vegas, they had part of the big piece of the Titanic, which they actually got from the ocean floor, which when you see it in person, it is shocking. I don't know if you like the Titanic stuff that much, but it reminds me, just because The Ghost of the Abyss was, I think, the movie that James Cameron had done about like the recovery of a lot of the things and the artifacts, and like seeing it on the ocean floor and talking about how you know, preservation and all these things, why they matter. Spent a lot of time doing that. And I think that was like really like the gap between Avatar and Titanic, because I couldn't believe it when you said it last week that Titanic, the film, there was no other James Cameron film until Avatar, except of course the Ghost of the
narrative film. Yeah.
Yeah,
Narrative.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or Hollywood film, we could say, you know. But I recommend it just because of like how nice it is to like hear the story about the Titanic. When I was in Southampton with TLB, we played in the place where the Titanic took off, and there's a museum there about the Titanic. So if you're overseas and you're listening to this, the Southampton Museum about the Titanic is one of the best museums I've ever been to. I was grateful that I got to go there and see it. It was like right before we played the show, you got to like look out on like the harbor or whatever you want to say, where the Titanic left port. And a lot of that exhibit on the Titanic there was about the people, the workers, talking about, you know, Metropolis here, the people that like had to go and like find a job. So they went on the, all of the people of Southampton ended up going and working on the Titanic, which ultimately sealed their fate. And a lot of people died, but a lot of people also had to be like in the, you know, shoveling the coal, you know, like a lot of these jobs that were not very thankful jobs. So seeing it here in LA, I enjoyed it. I wanted to talk about that briefly because James Cameron obviously is such a big person in the Titanic atmosphere and, you know, preservation and here and learning a lot about what happened back then.
He's obsessed with it, still is. So
yeah. And then we went to the Stranger Things exhibit out here, which was like an immersive experience, which was kick-ass. I know you haven't seen much of it, and that is one other segue that I want to say. So the character in the latest Stranger Things, the guy that's like the pizza guy, and he's driving like the car, and it's like the Hawaiian pizza place. His band is playing with my band on January 14th in San Bernardino. So if anybody's out there listening and you made it this far, thank you. But I also play in a band, and we're playing our first show. And from, you know, 2020 on, we weren't able to really play many shows. We're also in different places. This is our first show back. We get to play a bunch of songs. We're going to show a lot of art. My art's going to be there. A bunch of artists. The guy from Stranger Things band, they're called Dumb Bitches with Internet, which is a great fucking name. They're playing. And so if you're in California and you're going to be around San Bernardino, come check it out at Darren Varel. There's a bunch of information on it there, or at TLB Kicks Ass. And yeah, see the guy from Stranger Things band, see my band with a bunch of great artists, and also comedy from Lucy Said Go, which is my girlfriend's comedy troupe, will be there. A lot to offer this show. I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be real fun. And with that, that's my start of 2023. And this is such a great thing to come and talk about with you. I'm grateful for it all the time. So thanks for showing up this year too, Pat. And what do you got going on? What's going on ahead for you in 23?
Oh man, well, 23 is looking like, well, first of all, I just want to say I'm very excited for your comeback show. So we're definitely going to put link to that show in the notes. So if you're listening, you can just click on that.
Call me Brendan Fraser.
What's that?
Call me Brendan Fraser. This is my comeback year.
Yeah, that's right, man. Love it. No, 2023 is looking like a travel year for me. So I'm going to be definitely taking a little time off and going around the country a little bit as much as I can, because you know, this past year and a half was minimal of that. And exploring the country is definitely one of my favorite things to do with my time. So that's definitely going to be where my priority is. So, well,
I can't wait to see where we record the next episodes. You know, you may have a different surrounding.
Yeah, I mean, Bob Dylan's been in every episode so far. If you're watching on YouTube, so I might have to keep that going. I might put a little pixel on the side for the YouTubers. So.
All right. Well, how about the segue into, you know, the song picks of the week? Have you thought about your song pick for the start of 2023?
Yeah. Did you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll go first. I think last time you went first, right?
Sure, go for
it. Whatever. I just want to talk about the song "In All Honesty" by Tone Deaf George. Now, do you know anything about Tone Deaf George?
I do not. Not off the top of my head. No.
So Mike Rotundo was the lead singer of a band called Tone Deaf George. If you don't know who Mike Rotundo is, he is the bass player of the Plain White T's. And back in the day, he had a band called Tone Deaf George. Now they're like kind of like a ska punk band, and you never could hear their music anywhere. It was like kind of on a shitty CDR that you had somewhere or whatever. But this is the band that Tom, the singer of the Plain White T's, had loved so much when we were in high school that he was like, I got to have this guy in my band. And so Mike Rotundo ended up joining the Plain White T's when Tone Deaf George broke up. As of a week ago, it was released on Spotify, and it's so great. It was so great to hear it again. My brother's been fucking around doing his own podcast with Mike Rotundo. So it kind of spills into that. Eric's doing this podcast with Mike Rotundo, and I think it's called Boombox RV, where they're going to explore and talk to a bunch of people about music, life, kind of like what we do, but it's kind of more centered on musicians from our era, in our neighborhood, all those kind of things. And so with that, they've kind of been releasing some old music. And my pick for this week, for anybody who doesn't know Tone Deaf George, you're gonna love it. It's the first song on their EP, but they only made one EP, and it's called In All Honesty, from Tone Deaf George's first record. And it's out there now. Go enjoy it. And yeah, it's been really great to hear that song again after so many years.
Oh yeah, In All Honesty by Tone Deaf George. Love to hear it. Yeah, I'm excited for that podcast. I was definitely aware of it, so love to hear that. Keep on going. So
yeah, they recorded a bunch of episodes. They just haven't released anything yet, so it's upcoming. And yeah, he keeps on telling me like the people that he's had on, and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to hear. So I'm excited about it.
He's creating the good buzz for it.
Yeah,
love it. Very cool. Love it. Okay, yeah. So my pick this week is by somebody that we've talked about before, Nick Cave. I finished reading his book, Faith, Love, and Carnage, which I highly recommend. And in it, he gets pretty candid about his future with music, and he's pretty dead set on being done with like rock and roll, in moving into a far more spiritual kind of tone, which he's definitely had in his last couple albums, and I think he's only going to keep on going with that. So any type of like garage rock or post-punk hardcore vibes that he's had throughout, his 40 years, pretty much going to be gone from now on, which I'm looking forward to seeing what he does like in the future. But so my pick this week is from Grinderman, which was his garage rock side project from the late 2000s, which was his basically musical release in terms of wanting to get all the aggression that he had out, that he was kind of keeping on low for the bad season with his individual projects. And so they released 2 albums of pretty dark garage rock, very fun music though. And I love what they did with it. So my song this week is Heathen Child on Grinderman 2. Pretty raucous song. I love the use of the guitars in this, and the lyrics just are so fitting for Nick Cave. And so this is kind of a farewell to this type of masochistic and crazy sounding Nick Cave that we're not going to get anymore. So yeah. If you're
anything about you, it's that you love Nick Cave.
Yeah, well, that's going to be the end of me talking about it for a little while, but I needed to get a little love for Grinderman, which I don't think we.
No, that's cool, and I like hearing also the book pick as well. What's the name of his book that he just released? Because I know that was something you wanted to read, so you just finished it.
Yeah, I finished it a little while ago. Faith, Love, and Carnage. It's really just an interview book, a conversation about. Exactly the title, Faith, Love, and Carnage, and throughout his whole life and what it's been leading up to till now, in terms of art and loss and everything in between. And he just gets very candid on where he's going, like as an artist. And so it was if you're a fan of Nick Cave, definitely recommend the book. Like I said, it's a pretty easy read with it being an interview format, and he gets pretty upfront with what his regrets and challenges are in life. So yeah.
Well, awesome,
just one little disclaimer: if you don't like overly misogynist lyrics, stay away from Grinderman. I'm just going to be totally honest with you. Like it's satire for sure, but if you're not a fan of that, you can skip to his solo stuff. And maybe saying that will get you to listen to it probably more. So.
Yeah, right. The thing that I'm not supposed to listen to, I want
right. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. I'm excited about that pick, man. Yeah, I know that you've hit Meet the Grinderman a long time ago, and definitely some of those, like you said, like kind of like more rock and roll from him. Is there only 2 records from Grinderman? Is that right?
Yeah, they only did 2. Like I said, it was a side project that he was getting his more primal music out at the time, and it was. I mean, it sounds like his early, like late 70s stuff. So that's definitely what it was, like a throwback for him. So,
gotcha. Cool, yeah. Awesome pick. I can't wait. So we have a playlist going on Spotify that Pat will put a link to in the episode show notes, and you can listen to all of our picks from the last 5 or 6 episodes that we've taped. And yeah, it's a pretty cool and awesome and eclectic, I'd say, list that we put together so far.
Hell yeah, eclectic. That's definitely what we're going for, and it's definitely shaping up to be pretty badass. So pretty happy the way it's going.
Just like our movie picks, I mean, you never know what you're going to get with us, like here we're talking about a silent film, but then, Razorback may come up, and we're talking about an 80s horror film from Australia. It's like, you never know.
Hell yeah. Based on a couple of the series we got coming up for you, it's definitely going to be eclectic would be an understatement. Let's say that. So
totally. And as always, I am really grateful that people are listening. It's growing, man. I've noticed like a lot more people have been subscribing to our YouTube page, and I know it's a slow burn for us to get out there. We record these when we have time, but we're trying to keep it more consistent. So appreciate everybody listening and watching on YouTube. Just more to come.
Hey man, I always love talking with you. So definitely like a day at the beach for me.
Yes, sir. All right. Well, hey, happy 2023, happy New Year. And Pat, always make sure that the heart connects the head and the hands.
I'm trying my best, buddy.
All right. Talk to you next week.
See you, bud.
Bye-bye.